Meet me, Kim Wilson. I believe love wins. I've been married to my amazing husband for over 14 years. I'm very comfortable in my own skin. My parents did a wonderful job of loving me. I am the youngest of 3 siblings. I have 2 brothers and 1 sister. My favorite food are buffalo wings. If there's no blue cheese, go ahead and suspend that whole transaction. Honey, I gotta have the blue cheese. Professionally, I am a licensed professional counselor in private practice. I am also a podcaster and motivational speaker. Oh yes, we're all more than just one thing at any given time. I love inspiring the masses. It's my purpose. I use my education in human behavior to facilitate dynamic workshops and live events about building healthy relationships. I am the creator of I Need a Session, which is a YouTube show and ebook. My favorite word is amazing. It's better than average and okay. My motto is, why settle for okay when amazing is an option? Happy Thursday, my amazing family and friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Hi, Tamika. Thank you for joining. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, this is going to be a tough show for some because we are talking about when bad things happen to children. And there are some parts of it is going to be graphic. And the reason why, I want to be able to paint a picture of how traumatic experiences can be for children. If we are not able to talk about it as adults, how will our children be able to develop the language to even say something about it so it can stop? So there are some parts that I will talk about, and it will be graphic. And for those who are joining late, I will give you a warning to say, hey, I'm getting ready to go all the way there because there are some adults on here who have had bad experiences as children. And my intent is not to trigger anyone so you can re-experience all of those emotions. My intent this evening is for us to develop a language so we can continue to educate our children, to talk to our children so they can have the language to tell us when something is wrong. When they see something, they can say something. So, first up, there has been some information that has been updated since we lost all of those beautiful souls in Uvalde, Texas. And look at all those faces. Yeah, and I want to make sure we put their faces up there because all of those children, something bad happened to them. And here's the thing, triple, quadruple, 10 times, 20 times, 30 times is the number of the kids who witnessed, who are survived, and they knew those children. So some of the information that has been updated, and so I'm getting ready to tell you something graphic. So if you have children in the room with you, if you're just not joining and you don't want to hear the graphic information, I want to give you a few seconds to either mute it. And when I have said that graphic information, I would just wave my hand like this and you'll know. So here we go. So the doctor who was the director of the hospital at the time when those bodies first started coming in, one of the facts that he has shared about 2 of those, the first 2 kids that came in, they were decapitated. They did not have heads on their body. And the only way that they were able to identify one of those kids was by a t-shirt that was still clinging to their body by the blood. And I want to say that because as an adult, as a doctor, a professional, if he laid eyes on 2 small human beings that did not have heads, think about the other children that saw their classmate without a head. You cannot unsee that something bad happened to those children who survived as well. Even when you think about the little girl who put blood on her body from a dead classmate just so she could play dead and the shooter would not shoot her. And one of the things that stood out for me when her father talked was, my little girl is not the same little girl that I used to play with. Trauma can change us in so many different ways. And one of the things that I say often, behavior tells a story. And that's one of the ways that we can identify in our children if something has happened to them. So I'm just going to wave my hand if anybody muted their speakers if they didn't want to hear that graphic information. But like I said, there will be graphic information shared throughout this broadcast. So when I say when bad things happen to children, there are a number of experiences that can happen. And I want to go through some of them. Some of the experiences are abuse, physical, sexual, emotional, abandonment, neglect. Even when parents get a divorce, that can be very traumatic for children. So here are 3 words that I want you to remember that I'm going to be pushing out. I want you to push it through this filter: safe, stable, nurturing. Safe, stable, nurturing. That's what children have to have so they can thrive and develop healthy relationships with themselves and with other people. Safe, stable, nurturing. So even when you think about all of those kids that were put up on the screen, there was nothing about that environment that day that was safe, stable, nurturing. So, one of the first things I want to go to, even the abuse part, I remember many years ago, Oprah did a show on sexual abuse when men have been abused. And there was an audience full of men. And one of the shots that stood out in my mind, all of these men had pictures of themselves, and most of them, the picture that they held up, they were of a boy age when they were first molested. They were touched. And so I'm getting ready to tell you something graphic again, and just what men have shared with me in my own practice. For the most part, that I can recall, anytime a man has shared a story of sexual abuse with me, it was usually accompanied by tears, because just to re-experience that, a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old, as a boy, does not know how to say, here's something graphic. Yes, Uncle so and so, Uncle such and such was here yesterday when I know you all trusted him to keep me. But what he did was he made me get on my knees, and he made me touch his penis, and he had me to put my mouth on his penis. I know that's pretty graphic. But when you think about a 8-year-old or a 9-year-old carrying that secret for years on up until their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, and they have a difficult time connecting with people in personal relationships, or committing, or even trusting people, because somebody violated their trust at the age of 8 or 9 years old. And what I have found, just even in my own professional practice, um, a lot of times boys don't always tell, but sometimes girls will share. And when they do share, what's the most devastating thing is when a girl shares, a woman shares, and she's not believed. When her mom does not believe her. A 8-year-old girl, a 6-year-old girl does not always know how to say, yes, somebody put their penis or their fingers inside of me and it hurt. That's why I don't want to do anything today. That's why I don't want to play today. Something happened yesterday. But when they do share that, and especially if the mom is a single mom and the mom is dating and it's a new boyfriend, and just think about this. Over the past few years, we've heard story after story about kids being left in the car in the summertime. So now what has been happening over the past couple of years, news stations will actually launch a campaign about what not to do and what to do as far as leaving your children in the car when it gets hot, because we've had case after case of children dying in the car. So since we've heard so many stories, you would think, well, okay, I think we've all got the message that wouldn't happen. But just last week, two parents in Georgia, two parents were arrested because two kids were left in the car where the temperature got up to 120 degrees. So those things are still happening. And so even just it must have been about 2 months ago, I had a client to tell me, and you, just like I'm telling you about uh, this whole campaign about somebody, children being left in the hot car. So the same thing when a girl is not believed. Just about 2 months ago, just to hear a young lady tell me when I asked her, well, what made you run away from home? Why did you run away from home? She said, well, my mother's boyfriend, he started looking at me in a way that he should not have been looking at me. And then he finally made his move. I was like, what did you mean he made his move? She said, well, he tried to kiss me. He tried to get on top of me. And when I told my mother that, she didn't believe me. She accused me of trying to seduce her boyfriend. It's like, well, wait a minute. How can this same story? It's almost like we're reading from a script. Something bad happened to that young lady. Something bad happened to her. So when bad things happen to children, that's what I mean. It changes them. It can change their attitude. It can change their behavior. It can change the way they pay attention. It can change the way they learn. Once again, safe, stable, nurturing. So when I give that example of even that young lady saying to her, telling her mother where how her boyfriend, the mother's boyfriend, tried to push himself on her, it wasn't emotionally safe, it wasn't a stable environment, and it certainly wasn't nurturing when we think about what nurturing looks like. The other thing, domestic violence. When a child has to witness either whether it's their father, their mother, their auntie, somebody committing an act against them, that's that's horrible. So that means that either they can learn to accept those kind of behaviors as they get older, or they can be the person abusing other people. Something bad happened to this child. This child is going to grow into a teenager. This child is going to grow into an adult because they witnessed somebody committing an act against somebody else. And they don't always know how to go to school and say, well, I saw last night two of the adults in my household were fighting each other, and I was really scared that somebody was going to die. And part of the reason kids don't always talk, because there's this saying, especially something that happens in the Black community, what goes on in this house stays in this house. So when we educate our children and we continue to talk to them consistently about what is a safe environment, what is a stable environment, and what is a nurturing environment, and to look at life through that lens. And if it's not that, if it's not safe, if it's not stable, if it's not nurturing, what is it? It's chaotic, it's damaging, it's risky, it's harmful. And if somebody is sitting inside of a harmful, risky, dangerous environment consistently, we are molding that person to be a certain way. We're not molding them into safe individuals that will function inside of relationships and be nurturing to the other person and offer stability. Abandonment. This is a bad thing that can happen with children when they are abandoned. And you can live in the same house with somebody and they can be emotionally abandoned as well. If somebody is in their room all day and they don't come out to say, son, how are you? Daughter, how are you doing today? Did you have, how was your day at school? Just abandoned. I've had children to tell me that they just feel alone. And the other thing too, when adults become my client and they realize, they say, you know what? I was a lonely child. What made you a lonely child? I just felt alone. I never had anybody to talk to. So children can feel lonely, they can feel empty, especially when they are not being nurtured. When children are being nurtured, we're talking to them, they're being cared for, they're not being neglected. So it's very important that we offer an environment that's safe, stable, nurturing. I love you. You can do it. I'm proud of you. You got this, daughter. You got this, son. You're beautiful as you are. You are wonderfully made. Offering those affirmations. Um, Bullying. That's a huge thing that happens to kids, and they don't always say anything. Not only we have the bullying that comes along with the teasing, the taunting, the cyberbullying. That's one of the horrible things that happened to Jamari Terrell Williams. His mother was on my show last year, Monique Davis, and I told her, I said, you know what? I will continue to push this story out. Look at him. So young. Jamari, my mind, I think he was 10 years old when he took his life. Jamari Terrell Williams. I mean, this this little boy was full of so much energy, life. He danced. Do we have the clip where Jamari, where he danced before audiences, and that's what he loved to do? Look at him. He could do that split. Look at him. Jamari Terrell Williams, he was being cyber bullied through those video games and even at school because he loved to dance. And sometimes for young boys, there's this stigma in certain places. If you are a dancer, if you're wearing clothing that's tight like a dancer, he was being called names like gay and teased, taunted. And at the age of 10, this young boy, Jamari Terrell Williams, took his own life. Something bad was happening to him. He didn't know, he didn't have the words to say exactly what it was. So one of the things that particular crisis, what the opportunity that it has given us, it has given a person like me to continue to say his name, to talk about his trauma, his experience, so our voices of love can be louder than the voices of trauma, the voices of hate, the voices of ill intent. That's how we do it. And so there's another young lady, Arlana Miller. And this just happened last month, May 4th. 19 years old, Arlana Miller. She also took her own life. And I want to read one of the statements that she left. And the reason why I want to read this is because I believe it gives us some texture and it gives us some insight to where her mind was. I'm sure for her parents, she was her parents' only child. For them, it was probably still like she was their baby. She was still their child. So even though she was 19, she had been going through that pain for a long time. So let me just read something that in the note that she left behind, a little excerpt. I have been surrounded by people who may have honestly thought I was okay, but I haven't been okay for a while. Miller wrote, I struggled so much through just this year alone. To the people in my life, I pray you learn to vocalize your feelings and get help always. That last part is what stood out for me. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to share it. Because even on my previous episode, when we did it on mental health, I said one of the biggest barriers for people to healing is not asking for help. We will suffer in silence. And to read where she said, to the people in my life, I pray you learn to vocalize your feelings and get help always. And one of the barriers that keep us from connecting to help a lot of times is we minimize. We will minimize our experience by saying, oh, that happened a long time ago. Oh, that was only one time. Oh, well, it wasn't that bad. So if we can just start talking, just ensuring our children and emphasizing to them to talk about those feelings. If something is bothering them, they don't have to suffer in silence. Even when something like bullying is happening, for us to get on it immediately and consistently to stop it. And I do want to offer a resource for parents and even for children. We can pass this information along to our children because children are surfing the net all the time. And that resource is stopbullying.gov. It even tells you, it gives the steps that you can take, that if you have let school administrators know that your child is being bullied and nothing is happening, it tells you specifically the next steps that you can take to create a solution for your child. So we have some solutions on the table here. We don't have to suffer in silence. When bad things happen to our children, there are things that we can do. The other thing that we can do is be an upstander instead of a bystander. And that's part of the language that I pulled from stopbullying.gov, teaching our children to be an upstander. We don't have to stand by and watch somebody get hurt, harmed. We have a voice. It is our tool. We get to use it. When we see something, we can say something. We keep driving that campaign home to our children. And that's how we continue to empower ourselves as adults. We talk to our children. That's the second thing that we do. We have to continue to be in conversation with them. Self-awareness is a tool. When we use self awareness to pay attention to what we feel, what we think, even if a certain person comes around and we tell our children to pay attention, like if it feels like our heartbeat is getting a little faster, if our breathing has changed, we get to lean in and figure out what's behind those physiological changes that's going on in the body. Like, why is my breathing changing? Well, son, daughter, I noticed that you just got real quiet when such and such came into room. Get curious. It's not about we're not worried about stepping on another adult's toes. We're not worried about making them upset. My concern lies with children. My responsibility as an adult is to save the children. One of my favorite songs is by Whitney Houston, the greatest love of all. I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Yeah, it is our responsibility to affirm them, to advocate for them, to be their voice. If they can see us being a voice for them, then they can learn how to use their voice. The other thing that we can do is make sure that our children are connected to safe, stable, nurturing relationships. There it is again. What is a safe, stable, nurturing relationship? So, specifically for my single parents, there are so many predators out here. Whenever they see that a key relationship is missing, like the kid is in a one parent home, they're looking through a different lens. They're like, somebody is not on their post. They're seeing what they can plug in. In your mind, you're thinking, oh, this is a friendly person. That's why we have to be slow to allow those layers to come out. Last week, we did a show on intentional dating with the right intentions, and allowing those layers and those seasons to take place. So we just don't leave our children with anybody. We just don't allow anybody to just come and unpack and sit comfortably inside of our lives. Because in your mind, it may feel okay, but this person may actually be a predator. And sometimes we feel like, oh, that's not going to happen to me. That happens to everybody over there. But it can become our story very quickly, or somebody that we know, our niece, our nephew, the next door neighbor. I don't want to see it happen to any child. So I am passionate. Well, we have been rocking and rolling and hanging out for 25 minutes. I won't stop talking about this. We can't stop talking about this. So, just a recap, when bad things happen to children, it means that they are not in a stable, safe, and nurturing environment. And one of the things that we can do as adults, parents, aunties, caregivers, volunteers, or just their fellow human being, when we see something, we say something, we advocate for them, we keep using the language of safety, nurturing, we respond quickly, we respond consistently, we give them the language so they can have the language. We help them to learn tools like boundaries. We use tools like boundaries. We keep the good in and keep the bad out. And the good that we want to keep in is a peace of mind. We want to keep the innocence of our children. We don't even, one of the things that we didn't touch, one of the bad things that can happen to children when they are made to grow up really fast, they may not have enough of what they need, whether it's the resources like food, clothing, and those kinds of things. And when parents work all the time, neglect can happen and abandonment can happen. And so when they don't have what they need, they can go get it from somewhere else. And it can turn into a life of stealing, theft, because they don't have what they need. So they go take it. When they didn't have the attention, they go take it, or they accept it from wherever they can get it from. That's a bad thing that happened to a child. So love is the greatest gift of all. Safe, stable, nurturing. That's what love looks like. And that's how we protect our children. That's how we keep good things happening to children. That's how we create an amazing safe space for children. So, one last thing. One of the resources I want to offer to you tonight, if you feel like you are a person that, I've been thinking about counseling for a long time and you're not sure how to connect with it, one of the resources available to you is just hopping on to psychologytoday.org and looking for a provider. Also, everybody is not going to call a provider's office and say, hey, I would like to schedule an appointment, which is why I created my nonprofit organization, Onwards and Upwards, is to help people build healthy personal and professional relationships. I am going to be developing some relationship skill workshops this summer, and it will be free. So only thing you have to do is go to the website moving.oau.org. That's moving, MOVINGOAU.org, and hit that contact button in the right hand corner and send me a message and say, hey, Kim, put me on your email list. And that way, when I start rolling out the relationship workshops and seminars, you will be contacted and you'll be the first to know when that is happening. And also, my website is kimwilsonspeaks.com. I do have a book that I consider as the ultimate tool. It's called I Need a Session. It's the ultimate guide to confidence, positivity, and love. You could have been anywhere in this world tonight, but you chose to rock and roll with me, and I don't take that for granted. I'll see you next Thursday. Next week, we're focusing on men. It's Men's Week. See you next 9:30. Be well.